Hi everybody, this is Larry Asher, the Director of SVC, and I'd like to walk you through the course track for the certificate program for UX design. First, just how to interpret this graphic. If you see a large square, that represents a 5-week evening class. So those classes will meet for 3 hours once a week for a total of 5 weeks or 15 hours. You'll notice that in a couple of instances they are sitting on top of each other, and what that means is students are attending class twice during the week. The smaller squares represent a 2-part workshop. These are taught on Saturday mornings, and they meet for 3 hours, and then the next week they meet for another 3 hours, a total of 6. Let's talk about the prerequisites now for the course track, and there are 2 of them. You have a choice. You can either take the 5-week evening class, Fundamentals of UX, which meets for 5 weeks, or the 2-part Intro to UX, which meets for 2 consecutive weeks. One's a class, one's a workshop. They cover much of the same material, and you can just choose whichever one is most convenient for you. Then we get into the heart of the program itself. That top line of 5-week classes that has a dotted line running through it, that represents a true program within a program, in that those classes from user research to information architecture, interaction design, prototyping, and then usability testing all perfectly reflect the same product development cycle that any product will go through, whether it's a website for a large tech firm or an app for a small startup. Every single one of them goes through these steps. And so in each of these 5-week classes, we'll go into some depth. You'll learn about user research and why it is the absolute most important piece of any project. And you'll learn how to conduct some user research of your own by doing your own interviews and looking at secondary research. In information architecture, we talk about how the information within an app or on a website is organized. What's the most logical way to help our users find what they're looking for? And information architecture is that discipline. Next, we move on to interaction design. And interaction design is thinking about the very specific controls that one puts in an app or on a website to help people accomplish what they came to do. Is it a drop-down menu? Is it a free text field? Is it a map where you click on the destination, let's say, that you want to go? All those are valid interaction design concepts, and in this class will help you determine which are the right ones to use for a particular situation. What happens next? We prototype our thinking, working from wireframes, and actually building a working interactive prototype using Figma as our prototyping software. Once we have that prototype built, we can then go out and test it with users and make sure that all of our assumptions about the design were spot on. And where they weren't spot on, we can now go back and iterate on them until we have a very high-performing prototype and product. You'll notice that there are 2 classes in support of that main track. One is Soft Skills for Designers, and this is a class where you'll learn about how to be a good collaborator, how to present your work, also how to manage your time, how to give a critique, and more important, how to accept one gracefully. The other class is Accessible and Inclusive Design. These are both topics that have become quite front and center over the last couple of years. Accessible design is where we think of ways we can make sure that our product is usable by everyone. If they have a permanent or temporary physical disability, we still want them to be able to get the full use out of our product. And as far as inclusive design goes, we don't want to build anything into our site, and that includes the words, that somehow is offensive or excluding to all kinds of people who maybe lived a different life experience than the one we've lived. So that's what that class is about. Moving back up to that top line, you'll see that it culminates with Capstone. And Capstone is a class where we bring in a client, an actual client. It could be a for-profit or a non-profit or both sometimes. And you and your classmates will work on a real assignment from them. So you'll get to interview the client, do the work as a team, and then present it back to them. Let's walk through the workshops now. You'll see that the first one is Figma. That's the prototyping software I mentioned a moment ago. Pretty easy to learn and usable among groups as well as individuals, which makes it pretty desirable. The second one is design systems. Design systems are the way that very large organizations keep from having multiple people work on a project and each come up with a slightly different variation on how they would solve the problem. So let's say it's a button design. You don't want 10 different designers, each designing their own version of a button. So a design system includes some of these common controls and layouts. Think of it as a UX design cookbook. And so the designer can simply go pull those pre-made solutions down from the design system. The next workshop is working on cross-functional teams, because you will. It won't just be you and a bunch of other UX designers. You'll be working with content designers, the people who write the words. You'll be working with product managers, the people that really are the orchestra conductors for the entire project. They tend to be much more concerned with the business imperatives behind a project. And of course, you'll be working with developers, software developers who are going to take your idea and make it real. And so we need to know what each of these people do, what's important for them to be successful, and ways we can help support them. And then the final workshop that you see, writing case studies, that is about learning the prescribed way that UX designers write about their work and talk about their work. There is a bit of a formula to it, and for hiring managers, they're used to seeing a case study expressed in a certain way. We will teach you that way. If you do not have a portfolio going, you will absolutely need one. And so you'll notice under electives, that's one of the most important ones, the portfolio lab. So that is a class where we will take you from kind of 0 to 100 and help you get your website set up and populated with your case studies and information about you. The elective on top of that, visual design for UX, is for those of you who don't have any kind of background in graphic design. You'll need a little, because your prototypes have to look good, your website has to look good, and not just aesthetically, but also functionally. And we will learn that in that elective class. Presentation skills, that one probably speaks for itself. You have to be able to communicate your ideas both in the written form, but also verbally. Standing up in front of people or going onto a Zoom meeting, we will teach you how to excel at that. And the last one you see there, interviews and whiteboarding. Whiteboarding is a very specific interview methodology in UX design where you're asked to solve a problem, a bit impromptu, and walk through your solution graphically by sketches you make on a whiteboard. And we will show you how that's done. It can be a bit nerve-wracking, but I think once you've practiced it a few times, you'll feel pretty good about your skills there and ready for an interview. So the last thing I would point out in this track, and you'll see it in that bottom row of skill talks. So there's always a career focus to these talks. Any topic is game if it relates to helping you get a job. And these are 90-minute workshops that we will do periodically throughout the track. So that's the overview of this course track for the UX Design Certificate Program. If you have questions about it, and no doubt you do, we would be happy to answer them. So you can drop an email to us right here at this address, and we will get back to you and tell you more about these classes. Thanks so much for watching.